and go stage left.
You feel a history here. You feel a history of Albuquerque. You feel a history of UNM.
He knew his riches couldn't buy him in front of him,
yes.
Right? That's it.
You're doing signal to 4 boxes, correct?
Correct.
Check, 1, 2.
I've performed here with the symphony a couple of times, and acoustically, the sound system in here, it's extraordinary.
A little further.
Here in Albuquerque at the University of New Mexico, you built a lovely theater.
A 5, 6, 7, 8.
Half hour, half hour.
Downstage truss moving.
There was this sense that it could be the social, sophisticated, emotional core for Albuquerque.
He was indeed a ranch boy. He had huge hands. His fingers were twice the size of my fingers. And that's because when he wasn't in school, he was at home taking care of the cattle, dealing with horses, worked hard. It's just the way ranchers are. He was a star football player at Raton High, back when they didn't wear pads. He did the drop kick, beat Arizona. That was sort of famous, I guess.
An outstanding athlete and scholar, Popejoy enrolls at UNM in the fall of 1921 and graduates in 1925 with a bachelor's degree in economics.
Oh, my mother told a great story about when it was getting towards his senior year and everything. He told her that, I really want to become a football coach. Her response was, well, that's very nice, but if you do that, I'm gone. so he stayed.
Tom Popejoy quickly let go of the idea of being a coach, and in 1925 was hired as an instructor of economics. It didn't take long for him to work his way up the academic ranks to become an associate professor, as well as the athletic business manager and secretary of the Alumni Association. In 1937, he is appointed comptroller of the university, and during the World War II years, Popejoy serves as acting registrar.
I was born in 1945. At that point, my father had not become president yet. He became president when I was, I think, 3. I actually have a home movie that somebody took. It was, 1948. That's when they moved to the house. That's when he got anointed.
The presidency of Tom Popejoy spanned 2 decades. Enrollment jumped from 5,000 students in the fall of 1948 to more than 14,000 students at the time of his retirement in 1968.
The great thing that happened was the service people, mostly men, coming back from First World War II and then Korea, and the GI Bill, that became a means by which the university's student population expanded significantly.
I credit Tom Popejoy, for one, with the ingenuity of getting naval contracts to educate sailors. And where many campuses had just a smattering of 4F students there, we were loaded with sailors on the campus. I came just before World War II, so there was a lot of social activity, really a thriving campus, and I think surely that if the Navy students hadn't been here, the university would have suffered some really financial straits during that time. But it was a fun place to be, lots going on, and I wound up being the president of the student body my senior year, and that was also a good thing.
President Popejoy not only administered, but set university policy. He stamped his character permanently on the university by dramatically defending the faculty's right of academic freedom.
In the 50s, there was the Red Scare. People were being accused of being affiliated with the Communist Party or being read. And this one professor, he wrote a book about the Russian communist economy. And the American Legion just went crazy. There was a big hoorah about that. And he asked the New Mexico American Legion contingent if he could make a speech about it, and they agreed.
He defended the university against witch hunts, against anti-communism. I mean, you talk about a stand-up guy. He went down to the American Legion annual convention in Carlsbad and delivered one of the great speeches in UNM's history, in which he said, New Mexico faculty and students will not be second-class citizens. They will not be treated like criminals and subversives because they're not. You know, there were hundreds and hundreds of veterans on campus who, fought in World War II. 192 of our people died in those wars, and so where do you get off telling us that we're un-Americans?
He practiced that speech, I don't know how many times, but it worked. It did what he wanted it to do.
Well, it's one of the greatest speeches ever. And there's so many nuggets in it. There's so many amazing parts to it. President Popejoy took a stand for what the university is about, for the right of the faculty, but more importantly, for free speech.
The list of changes during Popejoy's presidency is a chronicle of the university's coming of age: a fine law school, a medical school, about 40 new buildings, including a basketball arena and a world-class concert hall.
He worked for the university all his life, but he spent about 2 years in Washington, D.C. as deputy director of the National Youth Administration. He had occasion to go to New York to talk to what was called Roosevelt's Brain Trust. And so, he got a taste for music and opera. I've often said if I have to hear Carmen again, I'm going to slip my wrist. Back in the day when I was a kid still at home, they didn't have stereo, but he had this great big single speaker that he could have in his bedroom and turn it on and drive my mother crazy. And at that time, and I'm talking maybe 1955 and on, there just wasn't any place that had a good place for music.
In the 1950s and the 1960s, most people in the United States, if they heard great music, they probably heard it either over the radio or they heard it on a gramophone or a record. And for President Popejoy to decide that he was not just going to celebrate the performing arts, but the visual arts as well, was the beginning of this understanding that Albuquerque did have a vital arts community.
When I came in 1961, it was, of course, a very wonderful moment because the planning for the new Fine Arts Center was just beginning. None of the buildings had yet been built.
So with Phase 1, with the construction of the Art Museum, suddenly the university could present visual arts in the most innovative and advanced way.
It was a very, very good moment for the college, one of rapid growth in size and quality. Part of that expansion was, of course, related to the facilities. We could not have had a great development of music or theater as long as we didn't have buildings and spaces to perform.
But the expansion didn't happen overnight. A concert hall for Albuquerque had been in the works since the 1920s. But one thing after another stopped the plans. In 1935, the Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce pushes the city to obtain funds for an auditorium when it learns that 25,000 people attend conventions and spend close to $500,000. But the numbers fail to motivate. Another 10 years pass, and as soon as World War II ends in 1945, a bond issue for $500,000 is approved. But still, there is no consensus on a site. In April 1950, President Popejoy agrees with the city to build a theater-type auditorium on part of the campus golf course. When it appears the auditorium is going ahead, another roadblock looms: the Korean conflict. Federal restrictions are placed on all construction of recreational facilities. By early autumn, concern about the size and purpose of the auditorium is being expressed by Mayor Clyde Tingley. Tingley challenges the idea of the proposed auditorium, saying it's too small and that it should seat 7,000. He describes the campus site as a hole nobody can find. The Albuquerque Tribune agrees that it's too small and writes, "Spending almost $1 million for a cracker box is like pounding sand down a rat hole." So just before Thanksgiving, Tingley opposes the campus site and says he wants a sports arena for the city rather than a theater on university property. Finally, in October 1953, the city formally requests a 3-acre site at Central and Cornell for an auditorium to be built with the funds on hand. The regents agree, but in a surprise move at their January 1954 meeting, the UNM regents asked to be released from their contract. Upset about the absolute lack of progress, President Popejoy tells the commission the university does not consider 3 years of wrangling with the definition of diligence, and later writes in no uncertain terms, as soon as funds are available, the university will construct a theater-type auditorium on campus that will seat 2,000. The breakdown in communication left both the city and UNM to their own devices. They each went their separate ways. The city determined to build their sports arena, and Popejoy determined to raise the money for a theater concert hall on campus.
Tom Popejoy, the man, the educator, the administrator, was just a unique individual with incredible vision.
Soon the city's sports arena is built on the west side of the proposed I-25 interstate. The round-shaped concrete structure opens to much fanfare in April 1957, and it is eventually named Civic Auditorium.
It was domed, and it was really for boxing. It was a boxing place.
It looked like a giant hamburger. It was the hamburger architecture of Albuquerque.
My first ballet recital was at the Civic Auditorium, but it was a wrestling rink. It was like, that was all Albuquerque had as far as a performance center. It was this wrestling boxing rink.
And it could hold everything from a circus to a rummage sale to anything.
Well, when I came here in 1962, the first thing I did was cry. It wasn't a sophisticated city, and it didn't have the buzz that the bigger cities had.
In the 1950s, the United States had not quite realized that the arts in the United States was beginning to be the thing that we could be most proud of as a nation.
The arts are the first things that go when universities are cutting. It took him 10 years to raise the money. What I remember is he would often say that he begged, borrowed, and stole the money. And it was a joke. And I think he got money from the state legislature, so he was able to go ahead with the construction. I just remember how, when it opened, he was just so pleased. He had brought me over and was grinning from ear to ear.
I just remember the buzz was, we've got a new performing arts theater, and it's beautiful.
I thought it was one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to any of us.
It was the first really great music venue here, and that we all thought was such a gift and also was important for everybody to know about. It was an interesting challenge to try to do a film that would show how wonderful this place was. It was a little bit difficult because we were shooting with super balls. Some of it involved shooting sideways, like there's some scenes where the balls are bouncing on a bulletin board. We shot the scenes in here where the little girl, Cindy, is experimenting with makeup. We did all these reflection shots in these mirrors here, looking at herself and running in and out through the green room. Well, Bill Martin was a key part of this film. I mean, he had a lot of input about what was going to be in it, like the orchestra pit that goes up and down, the lighting panel. All of that he wanted to make sure that we showed, and size of the place.
When they designed this place, they thought through all of it, and it even has a green room. You realize how many theaters do not have a green room that's accessible to an actor?
So it was a well-equipped theater. The only thing that was difficult about the stage at that time is it was black. They painted the floor black, and they had black drapes. And that was about the worst choice you could make.
In that first 5 years of the 1960s is when most of the major performing arts centers opened nationwide. That's when the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts opened in Washington, D.C. That's when the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts opened in New York. And that's when the Music Center opened in Los Angeles. So we were right in the middle of all of these other major metropolises opening their art centers. And so Popejoy absolutely had that vision that the other major cities across the United States shared at that same time. And it was astounding that he was able to get it done here in Albuquerque.
Tom Popejoy was a force unto himself. He was an amazing man, made a lot of things happen.
Popejoy changed everything as far as elevating the creative art and giving some place for people who loved good theater and loved good music and an evening of performance.
I'm a member of the Broadway League. Broadway League does the Tony Awards. We report our grosses to the Broadway League. All the producers of the touring shows see your grosses. They determine when a show is ready for your market. If you can imagine moving 20 semi-trucks for Phantom of the Opera around the country, it becomes very expensive to move that show. So of course, larger markets have first choice, and then markets like Albuquerque, and we've been growing our Broadway market. We started with 5 Broadway presentations, now we're up to 6. We're very happy with that.
When I get my schedule for the performances and I think, oh my goodness, look at all these things I want to attend.
When you come see a production here at Popejoy Hall and you're looking at the players on the stage, what you don't realize is there's probably at least 40 or 50 people that you don't see that are working. There's somebody running the light board, the sound board, there are stage hands, there's a stage manager. It's a huge team that works here to put on the productions.
We have a dedicated staff, augmented by university students. But including our board, our volunteer ushers, our arts ambassadors, our lounge workers, Popejoy has over 300 volunteers that support Popejoy's efforts as a performing arts center. One of the big misconceptions is we get to keep all the revenue. There's production expenses, marketing expenses, royalties, and artist fees. We really like the tagline that we are university founded and community funded.
This building was built for $2.5 million. Today, it will be $60, $70 million to build it. Would we build a Popejoy Hall today if we didn't have one? You know, I would hope that people would say, yes, we need one.
The performing arts and the visual arts have always been underfunded in the United States because we tend to think of it as superfluous. But at its best, the performing arts, the visual arts, can allow us to see the world around us in a very different way, can allow us to experience our lives and appreciate our daily experiences so much more richly.
I have always wondered why God invented lawyers. Did his mind wander? I went to Culver Military Academy. I remember when I was there, and you know, you had a march everywhere, a march to eat. And they had the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra was going to come. I didn't know anything about it. So, of course, I had an opinion. I'm going to be bored out of my life, the symphony orchestra. So I sat up and waited. And this orchestra began to play. maybe Brahms or something. I didn't know what it was. And this music, this sound, came over me like waves with colors and feelings that I had never heard before. And something happened in me. That I never felt before. And it awakened something in me, and actually, you know what I did? I started writing poetry. But that music entered me and woke something up that I would never have known before if I had not been there, and if I had not been exposed to that wonderful orchestra and that music. I would never have known. And that to me is a gift that you should never deny young people, because you don't know whose soul you're gonna open up. If you can do that for somebody, you may end up doing Mark Twain.
Tom Popejoy called Popejoy Hall the university's handshake with the community.
One of the great things, their school time series, oftentimes you'll see the lobby full of children coming here.
This space comes alive with giggles, with laughter, with enthusiasm of children knowing that they are out for a grand experience with red plush velvet covered seats.
I'm glad for the kids, the school kids. They see their first ballets, they see their first orchestra. It's a tremendous introduction to culture.
We welcomed over 58,000 K through 12 students to Popejoy. It's very exciting.
The idea of giving kids the opportunity to see themselves as worthwhile, sophisticated members of society is one of the most important educational messages that young people can ever get.
All the architects and designers and engineers that have worked on Popejoy have done a fabulous job with the acoustics, which of course are very important.
The acoustics are extremely critical to a facility like this. It needed a facelift.
You know, maintaining a state-of-the-art facility is really about the capital improvements to the hall.
In 1995, we renovated the acoustical reflective panels. We refurbished the seating at that particular time.
Even the seat pans, when the seats are up, if somebody's not sitting in the seat, there are holes in the seat pan to absorb sound as well, so the sound does not bounce.
And to be able to strip it away and redo it was really a joy and a pleasure, because it really works quite well.
I'll go back to what Tom Popejoy said as to why he put his name on this building. He said that he thought this building would have the longest lasting effect on New Mexicans, and it has. It makes a difference in people's lives. And it did then, and it does now.
He would never want personal accolades for what he did. He wanted it to be good stuff. He wanted it to be well done. To him, the university was everything. That was the be-all and the end-all of his life.
Popejoy Hall really brought to Albuquerque a sense that it's not just the functional things in life that matter, it is the ideas-based things. It is the lofty, elevating creativity of humanity that really makes life worth living.
Coming together and being part of a large group of people, looking at whatever the spectacle is important, because you realize you are not alone. You are part of everybody.
These things have a life that transcends a human life. They go on and on. They educate, they entertain, they make us humans.
That's what the arts do. They constantly push and they constantly innovate, and they take us to places we never thought that we would go before. And the fact that we have Popejoy Hall here means that we become the arts mecca for us in New Mexico to experience the rest of the world.